2, 3. Aloha! Hi everyone. We are diving into the 8 limbs of yoga, and today we will be discussing the first limb of these 8 limbs, and they are called the Yamas. I am here with Claudia Miko. She is an expert PT and also yoga teacher, trainer, and we have been doing this workshop for, 3 years now running?
Maybe, yeah, 2017 or so.
Yep, and December is usually when we do it, because in November we dive into niyamas in this New Year's, where we set our intentions for the year. But let's talk a little bit about the yamas, which are our restraints, or how we should live our lives in a really authentic and positive way. And Claudia, what do you think?
I love talking about the yamas. The 8 limbs of yoga, as Tanya was talking about, we tend to start our practice always in the limb, what we call asana.
Right.
And most people come to the practice from that limb of yoga. Now, limb, you think of like branches of a tree. You've got 8 limbs, as Tanya was talking about, and people jump in on the asana. Asana. But before asana, we study yamas, niyamas, then asana, then pranayama. Right, and those first 4, and then we study the second 4. So those first 4 are the way that we connect our body, our mind, and our ethics to yoga. So when we talk about the yamas, it's hard not to talk about the niyamas, asana, and pranayama, because they're so intimately connected.
All 4, those first 4 of the 8 limbs of yoga, are exactly what we need to connect to in our daily lives. And I know a lot of you are coming here on this platform as teachers and teacher trainees, or just wanting to know a little bit more about yoga and the philosophy of yoga. And this is where the yamas and the niyamas really come to their forefront or play, as far as yoga philosophy goes, and understanding more about what is yoga and what is the practice of yoga, because the practice of yoga is not just asana, the postures, it's not just the breathing techniques, it's not just the meditation, it is how we live our lives, how we relate to each other, and how we carry ourselves daily, and for the rest of our lives.
Exactly. And how we choose to work with ourself, right, and how we relate to others. So yamas, right, those are the restraints, and how do we relate with others. And then the niyamas, which we're going to study later, are how we relate to ourselves. However, they're very interchangeable. They always go back and forth between ourselves and others. So to delineate it a little bit further, we would say the yamas are how we work with the outside world, and the niyamas, or the miyamas.
The miyamas?
I call them the miyamas because that's how I can remember it with my brain. So the miyamas and the niyamas are those that we use to hone our own ethics, to hone ourself, whether what we eat is good for us, whether how we move is good for us, how we think, and what we put into our own being.
That's right. And there's 5 yamas, and there's also 5 niyamas, laws or ways to live by. And the first one is called ahimsa. And ahimsa means non-violence. And we don't mean just non-violent, as far as a violent, per se, but more how we treat each other, how we treat ourselves, right? How we treat animals, plants, every living, breathing creature on this planet. Non-violent, ahimsa.
Ahimsa. We love
Ahimsa.
ahimsa. So how would we relate ahimsa to our yoga practice for ourselves, and how we would use it in our teaching? Similar and different. How would we use ahimsa towards ourselves would be, how about I don't beat myself up for not doing something that I forgot to do? Or how about when I'm in a pose, I don't compare myself to others? How about it when I'm practicing that I am not saying mean things to myself silently in my head?
Or holding the pose too long.
Or holding
Have you ever
it,
seen that
or
before,
injuring
where
yourself?
someone's in
Yes.
a pose and they're like,
Not ahimsa.
that is not ahimsa. That's not practicing with love and nonviolence and things that come out of our mouths, right? Speaking our truth, but speaking with ahimsa, speaking with love, speaking with nonviolence, speaking with kindness.
Right. As we look at nonviolence and we think of only that, I'm not going to kill the cow to eat the beef. And that's really what people, when they think of yoga, right, automatically is cow, India. There's a lot of preconceived notions about yoga to begin with. And one of the things that people really don't get are the yamas. They again come into it from the other perspective, and then they believe, that you have to be a vegetarian. No, you don't. But you could try.
Or vegan,
or
plant-based.
vegan. Yeah, I mean, you can, but it's not a requirement. And I think that's one of the things that when you start to study the yamas and the niyamas, you realize that you can be a little more patient with yourself. If you want to be a vegetarian,
Right.
don't beat yourself up because you're not, because then you're not practicing ahimsa.
That's right. And so that's our first one. As teachers, or if you are going for credits for this course today, I want you to write down your thoughts. How can I practice ahimsa in my daily life? And this may be a two-part question. And how can I practice ahimsa in my sadhana, in my yoga practice? How's that?
I like it.
You like that?
Well, any introspection is good, even when it is coming from that other place, because what you learn is how to recognize it sooner. It really is just about recognizing when I am overstraining, let's say, in my practice, when I need to pull back, when I need to play the edge. There's times for all of those things.
Right.
But ahimsa teaches us how to find that balance.
It's like if you're in your practice and you have those red lights that start flashing when you're feeling pain, injury, or even when you're maybe even come to tears sometimes when you're in a pose. Pull back. Practice ahimsa. Give yourself a break.
Right, exactly. When you notice your students coming up against their stuff in a pose, and hopefully you are watching for the signs. Simple, easy ones are like clenched fist, gripping toes, and clenched teeth. For simple ones.
Right.
And remembering to teach them that ahimsa is the knock on the door to your body. When you're practicing ahimsa and you're recognizing if I'm being violent towards myself, and we say violent loosely there.
Right.
It's just a knock. Now, if you don't pay attention as you're practicing and you continue on that road, the knock at the door becomes breaking down the door, and your body breaks down. And if you can look at it that way and help your students to understand that we're doing these things for a reason, we're learning how to recognize in our body those places where we're going to come to that edge of pain or discomfort, or where we might injure ourselves.
I always say in class, find your intelligent edge without going over your edge. Or practice ahimsa.
Exactly.
And so you can use that language and that verbiage in your classes when you're teaching. Or if you are a practitioner, just practicing and speaking to yourself, speaking your truth, speaking with ahimsa and kindness.
Yes, definitely. And as a teacher, I know that is most important to educate your students and not expect that they know what these words mean. This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Right.
Is you go to somebody's class and they're all high and mighty and they're going, Virabhadrasana 1! And they're counting in Sanskrit, and you're just like, hello. And look, I've been studying Sanskrit for, see, I can't even say it right, but I've been studying Sanskrit for a long time. Swahili. I've been studying Sanskrit for a long time, and you know what? I don't always remember the words.
That's right.
Because it's not what I do every day. So please, for the love of God, interchange your words.
It reminds me actually of David Williams, who is a really renowned Ashtanga yoga teacher. He's been the first American Westerner to learn the Ashtanga system from Pattabhi Jois back in the day in Mysore, India. And so he's been teaching 50 years or something. And I remember going to one of his workshops, and I remember him saying, Sanskrit, it might as well be Swahili. So
right, it's true. And
it's true.
And not saying that you don't want to teach them. That's a really important thing.
Right.
Because the words themselves have a vibration. And that's the reason why your teachers in those type of classes do it that way, because they want you to hear and feel the vibration. However, if you don't understand what that means,
right,
it's not really going to have an effect. So when you're teaching, look at the word and use it interchangeably. So for example, you could say in a forward bend, let's notice our intelligent edge, as Tenya would say, and notice if we're going too far. That would be injurious, or that might be a slight violence towards our body, or however you want to say it, and then teach them that the word for that is ahimsa, and that is one of our yamas, and that is one of our limbs, and so on from there. So you layer that, so it's not just saying the word without the meaning.
So in the Yoga Sutras, it means no harm in actions or thoughts. Ahimsa. Let's all say it together. Ahimsa.
It actually, it's ahimsa.
Non-violence.
Yeah, easiest way to know. Ahimsa.
That's the first one.
So yes, the vibration of the word is important. However, use it with care.
Awesome. And that's our first yama in the 8 limbs of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras from ancient yogi philosophy and wisdom. And the second one is satya, truthfulness.
Satya, truthfulness. Yes, truthiness, as Stephen Colbert might have called it.
Truthiness?
Truthiness. Yes, he coined the term. It's in the Urban Dictionary, by the way. Truthfulness.
Truthfulness.
Yes.
It should not cause any harm in words, deeds, or actions.
Hard to do sometimes.
Right? Not to use honesty as a weapon.
That's easy. No.
Instead, be compassionate towards others and how we speak, and letting go of judgment. That's really important, right? Letting go of judgment. And
you see me rolling. I'm not rolling my eyes.
All placed
on that.
with ahimsa, the satya, and we practice ahimsa with feedback and forgiveness in satya. Right? In satya, we practice ahimsa. That makes sense?
We're always practicing. Hopefully, we're always practicing
with feedback and forgiveness. So, truthfulness, being true. This is now it's taking me back to my Catholic school days.
Yeah. Satya.
Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt be kind of harm. Thou shalt not tell the truth.
And when we talk, and it's not just like she says, not using the truth as a weapon. That can be really tricky for people. And I'll bring it into how this goes into relationships, because these are the ethical rules. Like in the Christian faith or any of your other faiths, you have commandments, right? Now, while our practice isn't necessarily a religion, although people do sometimes pretend like it is, these are just ideas, right, to help your life through your practice, because when we move our bodies, right, we move our entire being, and we move our thoughts, we move our feelings. So these feelings, satya, will come up. Am I being truthful toward myself? Am I being able to be truthful toward myself? Because if I'm not going to be able to be truthful towards others.
That's right. Speaking your truth there again, but speaking with ahimsa, with compassion.
Yes. And it's a tricky slope, because sometimes
the truth hurts.
Yes, the truth can hurt, and sometimes Right. I mean, it's about being discerning
Right.
about that. You don't, if somebody has, a big wart on their cheek, you may not want to call attention to it right in the middle of class. For example, you're really understanding
not.
where your limitations are in
Boundaries.
Right, the boundaries or limitations, right, of using truth.
Not as this weapon that you were saying, or
Not
maybe we could
as a
think of another
weapon.
word than weapon, but
Well, but it can be a weapon because people.
where you can harm others.
Yes, because we use it in a way that if you're in a relationship and your husband is doing something all the time and it annoys you, but you've never told him that it annoys you, then it becomes a way where you can use that truth as a weapon to hurt them. So I'm just saying that,
You get
it
resentful.
comes out, right, exactly, in our relationships in odd ways. And
Or in your bodies.
and in our bodies, of course.
Or
yeah.
in your practice, and then also in your teachings. So being truthful in your teaching, right? Be truthful with your students, compassion, right? You know those students sometimes that are clingy, or they attach yourself, and having healthy boundaries and being truthful with that.
Yeah, and that's an
With
interesting-
compassion and
right,
with love.
With compassion. and
That's
with
another
love.
whole class on that.
Yes. And then when it comes to the truthfulness in that outward expression, we can always go back to our practice, look inward, and what am I holding back from myself, right? And then when I'm practicing, you can use your practice to support maybe coming out and delivering that truth outward. By practicing it in your breathing and in your meditations.
That's right.
And in your visualizations.
So, questions. We can do our, maybe ask yourself this question for my teacher trainings, right? How can I be more truthful to myself in my practice, with my students, with love, with compassion, with ahimsa, linking the two together? That's a good question to ask. Unless you can think of something else that you would also like to add in there for truthfulness.
I mean, I think people know generally when they're bullshitting and when they're telling the truth to themselves. And it's, again, another slippery slope. If you have things that you're not ready to look at, your practice, you may come up into a wall in a pose. For example, I've always wanted to be able to do this particular pose. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't. Well, first of all, you're telling yourself you can't do it. So you keep repatterning that same, right? You're never going to do it if you keep saying I can't do it. Or if you say my hamstrings are so tight, my hamstrings are so tight. Well, they're going to continue to be tight because you keep affirming that. So that would be the first thing that we want to look as teachers towards ourselves, and how often we say those things, and being really truthful about that.
So put that down. It's your question number 2.
There may be a quiz.
Well, there's definitely a quiz. Number 3 is brahmacharya. Oh no, asteya, non-stealing. Yes,
Asteya.
I went too quickly. Asteya, non-stealing. There's a thou shalt not steal. Here we
Yeah,
go.
the non-stealing, it's kind of a weird word, non-stealing.
It
So
is.
how could we make the word non-stealing into a pot without the no part of it? So be leaving things where they are, perhaps.
Right.
Letting things be.
Letting things go, not possessing, right?
Non-possession.
Or control of a personal relationships,
Letting it be
temptations.
Easy.
Letting it be easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's so, which
So.
yeah, so, which is a filler word, by the way.
Non-coveting,
Right.
non-stealing, right? Asteya, non-stealing. How we cultivate a sense of self-sufficiency. Does that make sense? We will have no fear when we attain things through honesty or honest means.
Right, because if you have to tell a wicked story about something, first of all, there's a lot of layers of junk that you have to deal with. It doesn't keep you in alignment at all. And when you're doing that, you're not being truthful with yourself. You're not being truthful with others. So it ends up going back to those other yamas. So what do? How do we bring that into our practice? How do we bring that asteya into our practice?
Yeah. Letting go of material possessions as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Letting go. I say letting go, but because some stuff you need.
Right.
So how do we bring this into the physical practice, right? Because that's really what you're here for, right? Even though we're learning the ethics, we're not psychologists. But we are a psychologist when somebody comes to us with their body, and then we start making them breathe and move and discover and imagine and meditate.
That's
Their
right.
body is going to say something, and now you're the keeper, right? You're the keeper of that person's energy for that hour, however long you're going to be with them. How are you going to redirect that? How can you use this information, in a way to help them and also to help yourself? Because the truth is we can't go any further in our practice for ourselves and our students than we're willing to go on that level of, again, going back to playing the edge. So our students aren't going to progress unless we are willing to take those extra steps.
Yeah. That's great. Well, number 3 question then.
Number 3 question.
For non-stealing, for asteya.
Well, how do you rob yourself of the value or the pleasure of your practice?
I like that one.
How-
You can
yeah.
see that every time we teach this class, it evolves into something else. So I think the questions always change.
They do.
It can mean many things to many
Right.
people.
Right. It's not a one-trick pony.
It's
for
not a
sure.
one-trick pony for sure. So moving on, maybe.
Yes.
So that's number 3. Now we're into brahmacharya. So that's number 4. Brahmacharya, how we handle our sexual energy, how we handle our energy as a whole, right? How we present ourselves
Yes. How
out
we
in our
practice.
communities.
And how do we bring that energy into our classes? How do we bring that energy towards our own practice, and so on into our life?
Right? And also can be like cravings, right?
Yes. We can get into food. We can get into sex. We can get
No.
into drugs. We can get into addiction.
Right,
We
addictions.
can get into all of that.
Brahmacharya.
We don't have a lot of time for that.
It means moderation in desire, emotion, sensual pleasure, and attachments. And that comes from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So it's moderation. It's the balance.
Right.
Staying whole and well and balanced,
Right.
which
And-
is not so easy to do.
And which isn't so easy to do. And how does it come up? And this is a good one, because this one, see, I'm holding my neck as we're talking about this. Where does this come up for people in their practice? What poses would this come up with? Because now we're looking at an area that's in the lower chakra area.
Right, Swadhisthana and Manipura.
And that's why it all flows together. Now we obviously have to delineate
Connect it
everything,
together.
but then we start to put it back together. So this particular one, brahmacharya, is it has many meanings, but the main one is how we use that energy, and that energy comes from the sexual. I would say the sexual energy, but the spiraling kind of we call it the snake energy, Shakti. Sorry, I told
The
you,
Shakti.
35 years and I still forgot what Shakti meant.
Shakti.
That Shakti energy that is living at the base of your spine. Think of a rattlesnake, right? The rattlesnake that's rattle. That's like your tail and your sacrum. That's how I like to think of it. And that energy is down there, and it rattles and it vibrates. Now, sometimes it can be completely blocked, right? And sometimes it can be a little too open. And again, we come back to that balance, right? How we put that out there. Now, when I come to class, do I, my tits up? Sorry, I had to say tits on the show, but are we boobs out, tits up? Are we wearing too low cut of a shirt? Pull that up. Are we showing up in short shorts when it's inappropriate?
Right.
There's things like that. Are we giving off a vibe to our students, in a certain way that maybe makes them feel uncomfortable? All of these things are things to look at with brahmacharya, and it will take a lot longer than a 5-minute discussion to consider these things.
And Brahma means creator, and Charya means teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that could be your question in your practice, in your teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Brahmacharya, are there certain things that you feel like that you need to find more balance? Are there desires that are unhealthy? Addictions?
Right.
Your teachings, as far as, as in the classroom, are there ways that you make sure that you are being not just positive, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, we're holding the energy, right, of the group, as we were discussing, and we're making sure that the energy is contained in a special way.
That you're not giving off, I guess in England we say dodgy.
Dodgy.
Dodgy energy,
Yeah.
that you're giving off this real light and, positive ray of, happiness.
Right, and how we interact. I mean, look, we can go really deep into this, but for women and men, this is a different subject, in a lot of ways, because women have, in this particular system, will be the kind of receivers of energy, right? And the males will be the givers of that energy in certain ways. So there is this dance that we play, and brahmacharya comes really close in our relationships, because we are trying to vibrate with, let's say, our loved one, our partners, even just our friends. When is this helpful, when is it harmful, and how do we use that energy in a way that uplifts us, right, and doesn't make us feel guilt or shame or blame and all of that kind of stuff. Like I said, we could go on for hours with this.
We can see how they're all so different, but also interrelated with each
Right.
other. And you'll see that with the niyamas.
Mhm.
And we'll move on. We have one more to go.
I
which
love
is-
talking about that one.
I know. Apigraha.
Aparigraha. Yeah.
Aparigraha.
It's a hard one. After 30 years, it's still hard to say.
Pahigraha. Pahigraha.
There you go. Aparigraha. The lengthen.
Non-possessing. So,
Yeah.
non-possessing. And
So let's think about hoarding, for example.
Hoarding.
I like because hoarding is a good example of aparigraha.
a lot of possessions that you're holding on
Yeah,
to.
in the simplest of terms.
That
Now,
giving you
Yeah.
the brahmachara, right? It's all kind of connected,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's
really-
giving you that desire, that filling that need or that
Right.
void.
right, and
Right?
it's coming back to like money, sex, power,
Right, right.
control, and again, we always think like that. This is a bad place to go, lower chakra. It's not about like it's bad or good. It's about alignment all the time.
That's right.
Every wheel that's spinning, right? When we talk about chakras, nobody knows what a chakra is, and it's an ethereal thing, right? It's not a real thing. It's a perceived thing, and the endocrine glands line up with that. But it's a thing. It's part of our practice, but it's not tangible,
Letting go of the things that we don't need,
Mhm.
that are not serving you. It's like that spring clean,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Minimalistic, getting rid of just that piles and piles of stuff, material objects, things that you don't need, not serving you,
Mhm.
right? Not serving a purpose, holding you back.
Exactly. Holding us back, or keeping us prisoner in some ways a lot of the time, because you don't necessarily own stuff. Sometimes stuff owns you. And I'm not saying, because I know people will get it twisted, I'm not saying go out and sell all your stuff, because I like stuff. Stuff is awesome. I love clothes. I have
Memorabilia.
stuff to wear. Yeah, I mean, I need a place to live.
High school yearbooks.
You know, and again, it will come back to finding that balance in this Western culture. You know, taking what we know.
Also, might want to think about it if there's creating boundaries. If there's certain people in your lives that are, you know, energy sucking or not serving you, you have to be able to let them go.
And
right?
Not the easiest thing
No.
to do.
Not at all, especially if they're like family members.
Right. And
or
sometimes,
a really
right.
close friend that you've had a long time, or maybe just for that moment, just for a while.
Right.
Maybe letting it go if it's not serving you. So that could be a really that's a good question here in your for number 5 question. What can you let go of that's not serving you in your life and in your practice?
Think about that.
Does that all make sense for non-possessiveness? So the beauty of these yamas that they will speak to you differently in different times of your life, different seasons, you know, different times of, I don't know.
Well, different times of the
day.
day.
Right. I mean, you know, that's
minute
like,
to minute for people like me,
Right.
the ADHD.
That's the
So,
thing
yes.
about, you know, having your yoga practice and being present in your yoga practice every day and, you know, trying to live by these rules or laws of life. I don't like to say rules,
I
but
know,
even,
we
or
hate
laws
rules,
even,
yeah.
but
Considerations.
ways, considerations of ways to live your life,
Yeah.
ways to live a more fulfilling, positive, yogini life and lifestyle, and how to also be a really positive teacher and, you know, to a mentor to your students. And so, these yamas will speak to you at different times of your lives, and take a few minutes to journal in ones that might have been speaking to you the loudest today, even.
So we can put a recap. Ahimsa.
Nonviolence.
Yes. Or what was another? Ahimsa. We said nonviolence. How do we use it in our practice? Right. Remember that question. What was the second one?
Satya.
Satya. And what was that one?
Truthfulness.
Right? Or think of Stephen Colbert. Truthiness. Satya.
Asteya, number 3.
Asteya.
Non-stealing, non-coveting.
Or I don't like the word non-stealing just because I don't like the negatives in the word, because then you always think about
Stealing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Don't think about a pink elephant. But you're going to think about a pink elephant.
Brahmacharya, moderation.
Moderation.
With your desires, right? And then, apigraha.
Aparigraha.
Parigraha.
Yes,
I always
forget the
have
I.
trouble saying that one.
It's okay.
I always do. I probably will always say it that way.
Yeah.
I just know
It's
me.
okay.
I know. And that's non-stealing, non-possessiveness. Right? Non-possessiveness. Don't get that confused with
Well,
me.
I know. And they, again,
Non-stealing,
we said they
asteya.
all do relate.
Non-possessiveness.
Non-possessiveness. So what's another word for non-possessiveness that would be a more positive word? So if we could take that, typical definition, right, from the Yoga Sutras, it says non-possessiveness, and turn it into a positive. What would that be? Just out of curiosity.
Write it in your journal.
Okay. Something more to think about.
Something to think about.
Too many things to think about.
Okay. So when you're done doing some of your writing, we are going to go over some different asanas and techniques that you can teach your students. Some yin practice, as this is called, Yinyasa.
Yinyasa.
And the Yamas. We're doing some yin asanas today. And I feel like the yin practice is lovely, especially at the end of the day, winter months, the winter solstice.
Right.
This is why we usually teach this class in December, I think this is our third year going, teaching this class. So let's take a little break, get some water, go to the loo, and put your journals away, grab your mats, and let's go.